So this video is going to be covering intervals of increasing and decreasing and finding the relative and maximum and minimum points. So take a moment and put this in your calculator. A good window to use is letting x be between -4 and 4 and the y value being between -25 and 25. That would give you a good window on your calculator. So you can use that. There is a function on your calculator that will help you get the max and the min values, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. Let me show you a picture of the graph right now. Let's see, this one right here. So here's a picture of the graph. Here is the maximum value, and here is the minimum value. You want to practice on your calculator finding those because you won't have Desmos to use. So I can tell you here that you have it's called a relative max at the point -1.061, 19.092, and you have a relative minimum point at 1.061 and -19.092. This is one of those that is symmetric to the origin, so that's why the negatives and positives are switching like this. If I go back to the graph, you see that here at this max, you get that, and here at the min, you get that. Now, why is it called relative? Well, relative is because if you look at this max, there's actually higher values up here. So it's not what would be called an absolute maximum because there are others that are higher. But what we want to get to, it's going to kind of help you in calculus, is that a relative max is called an extreme value, and it's always going to be at a peak. So the relative max is at a peak, and the relative min is at what I would term a valley. So let's look back at the graph. And what I mean by valley, here's the relative minimum down here. And this is kind of like a valley. So we've got our peak, that's the relative max, and our valley, which is the relative min. So those are important in finding the intervals of increasing and decreasing also. So to find those intervals, let's look back at the graph. This is a part here that this part right here is actually where it would be called increasing. So it's increasing all the way up until we get to this maximum. And then this section is decreasing until we get down to the minimum. And then it's increasing again everywhere else. So how do we denote that as far as an interval? Well, it's really not that hard once you have the relative max and the min. These are the hardest parts, is to find that. And really it's just a few keys on your calculator, so pretty straightforward. But in this graph, or on this graph, our increasing intervals are from, we know that it's going all the way up to -1.061. And so we have to put in negative infinity here. Negative infinity up to -0.061. Now the decreasing was next, so I'll just write that down. This is from -1.061, the x value, up to 1.061. And then we have a second interval for increasing, which is 1.061 comma infinity. Now between these two, I'm going to do a union, And yeah, this is part A. We have that, or I guess number 1, excuse me. And down here, this is the part for number 2. But it turns out we need number 2 first. On my math lab, when you're doing a problem, you'll have nice points that'll just show up on the graph. But I wanted to do this challenging example so you could practice using your calculator to find the relative max and the relative min. It's always helpful to learn how to change the window too. So play around with it. You don't have to use my bounds. But how do you actually find these? Well, what you'll do is you'll go to that calculate. Remember, calculate is when you type in second trace. Second trace will get you to calculate. You want to go for the minimum is going to be number 3. It's going to ask you for a left bound, so you move it close to the minimum, and then you'll hit enter, and then you'll move it to the right bound, and then you'll hit enter again. Oh, if I could spell, right? And then you're going to put it on the actual minimum and do your best to get that. Enter. And from here, you're going to, you should be finding this point, 1.061, negative 19.092. And you'll follow these guidelines to do the same, but the next time when you're doing the max, you're going to start with number 4, which is maximum, and then it's the same. So I hope that will help do it. Let me know if you need more assistance with that. Thanks.